I found through life that if you think 2 steps ahead, you're ready for what's coming next. So I'm working on one book, but I've got another 5 books sketched out. I know what I wanted to do next. It's the sort of incremental positive habits that get you somewhere. So I know what I want to do and what I want to achieve. I know who I want to be. I know how good I want to be. I know where I'm going. And I do it every day.
Welcome. This is Unfolding, the show where I unfold creative business minds. My name is Marco Pfann, and now I just want you to sit back and enjoy the show. So, welcome back. Today, as my guest, we have Radim Malinic, and I actually met him at OFF. I love his speech that I actually watched afterwards, but he had a really nice speech, and that's why he is on our podcast today. Welcome, Radim. Would you do me a favor and introduce yourself to the community?
Well, first of all, Marco, thank you very much for having me on your show. I've enjoyed your previous episodes, and yeah, I discovered your podcast through episode with David Sheldon Haight, who's our mutual friend. And to introduce myself within a minute, because normally it takes a longer time. I'm ECD at Brand New Studio, which is the studio I founded about 20 years ago. I'm also a 6 times published author from my own publishing company, Brand New Books. I'm a founder and CD of Likes Coffee Company. That's the one. And I'm also a host of a podcast called Creativity for Sale. So I'm very much from the non-linear background.
Yeah, that's true. But you're a designer, you're creative. How would you define yourself? What's if you would
I'm a designer and author. Like I design things and I write. That's the 2-word answer.
That's 2-word. So one thing I want to talk to you about today is about those changing identities which occur in any creative career, but oftentimes people hold themselves back because they don't want to change. They want to be seen as the artist. But it's amazing what you do. Like you have the books, the podcast, you have an agency, coffee company, your speaker. There's so much. How do you get all this together?
I mean, it took a while to make sure that everything can work together in sort of the multi-tandem. It's. I think we dream about so many different entities, actions, identities, if that makes sense. Because I always say that we are kind of like on a highway of creativity in life. And obviously you open Twitter, Instagram, whatever social media platform, you open it, and everyone's kind of everything. Everyone's a millionaire, everyone's doing something amazing, like everyone's got, amazing turnover. And you're like, are you for real, really? But it shows us possibilities of what we can be. And it's that true, how would I say, it's not calling, but it's that sort of magnetic energy that, if an idea doesn't go away, you want to really explore it. Because I'm currently in the process of writing my 7th book, which is titled No Risk, No Story. It's based on the talk I did in Barcelona. No Risk, No Story is a message that I kind of retrospectively realized I was on the journey of. I'm exploring these things as opposed to kind of sticking with a linear career, like, okay, I've got an agency, let's build it to, big, let's go wider, bigger, bolder. Whereas I have to stay true to what makes me happy and what I can do and what I can manage, because as you know from talking to quite a few agency founders and people in the creative industry, the bigger doesn't mean easier. The bigger fish doesn't taste better, like the bigger meal isn't easier to digest, so when we do more and more and more, then you have to expand your headspace to actually accommodate everyone on board. Whereas I've proactively taken a step back about 18 months, maybe to 2 years. I was like, okay, right, I have built my studio big, not to the place where we were producing, work with a nice team. It was great. I was enjoying it from the perspective of work, but my personal headspace couldn't manage it. Like I had a young family. I was zipping about between studio and school pickups and back to the studio. And then you try to separate the worlds and it doesn't work. And I thought the more people I would hire, the more time I would have to do other things, which turned out to be absolutely the opposite. It was like the more people I hired, the more feedback I had to give and more things I had to repeat. And I was like, I then discovered that I'd hired the wrong people. Not that I didn't not enjoy having them, but I have read a book by I was going to escape me now. It's called "Buy Back Your Time" by Dan Martell, and it's about buying people. So by buying your time back by hiring people who can offload the stuff that you don't necessarily want to do. So as opposed to me hiring other designers, I hire admin people, I hire social media people. The things that I don't have to do, the invoicing and that kind of stuff, you hire people to do that. And you can actually wake up and do the things that make you light up. So I, as opposed to chasing feedback or, briefing designers on stuff that I actually have to scale down my agency to so small. There's only like 3 of us right now. And I still do a lot of the design work. I still deal with the clients, but I've got people doing the things that don't take too much away of my time. So then I can actually do other things like, launch a coffee company, write another book, plans, workshops for agencies and that kind of stuff. Because I realized that the time is now. Like I would look back in 5-10 years and go like, I've got a nice looking bank account, but I'm unhappy. The work that we've created 5-10 years ago, no one gives a shit about it. It's just to create a long-term value, because from my non-linear career, I have created so many different pieces of work with so many different companies and agencies, and all of it is dust. It's basically it's all news. So what I want to create going forward is actually create meaningful companies, meaningful brands, meaningful products and messages that I can share with people and actually enrich their lives.
I mean, are you taking, how do you still, so you still do the creative work, but you do the other things too? And I think one of the things the audience member have in mind now is this: how does this financially work? If you actually spend a lot of time outside the work that makes you the money, and I want them to understand that there's a way to make this work. So what's your way? How do you make this work?
So I would say, and this is honest opinion or honest truth. We are currently the most overpriced artwork in studio in the world, I would say, because we have got to the point where we have got the status with our clients where their work isn't exactly ambitious. Some of our clients' work is not ambitious, but they are, government-funded agencies or international sort of multinational companies and brands, and their budgets are bigger, and the workload is not always as heavy and intricate as it used to be in the past. So if you work with a new startup and you want to brand them and you want to sort of do all of the work that's necessary from discovery, from immersion, discovery, strategy, design, application, activation, that's a lot of work and you need a lot of people. And the money's not always, sort of too much. You don't always get that stuff. So it takes a lot of your time. Whereas I have proactively only worked with existing clients. So I haven't taken on new work since October 2022 because we had some financial sort of reserves and ongoing clients that with lower overheads, we can actually take on less work and just about make it work. So my bank balance never looks scarier now, but my life and my career and my professional lives never been happier, Yeah. So it's just like before we had a situation where we had lots of work and some financial security, but we were not happy because that's the scales of life, we were not doing the things that we really wanted to do. So now we're pursuing the hopes and dreams and just about making it work. And I think that's the part sort of that no risk, no story comes into play, because if we were servicing clients and looking after financial security, then we would be, doing all sorts of things that we don't necessarily want to do. So I looked at it that the happiness doesn't come with money, because designers, creatives, illustrators, freelancers, they always try to keep their money reserves to one side. It was like, I'm not touching this, like something can happen, which is absolutely, existentially right. And this is our survival instinct. But when you find yourself going, you know what, I'm going to open up, I'm going to do it, I'm going to not even like play it risky. I'm just going to pursue what I really want to do because something's got to give. So what do you want to be? Like, do you want to be financially secure and kind of bored and resenting your clients because you have to do the work that you don't want to do or the changes that you don't want to do? But, you know, if you break your leg, you've got money. Or do you actually want to pursue the thing that when you look on that highway of life and creativity, you see other people do, it's like, oh, I wish I could do that. I wish I could do that thing and this thing and that, you know, like, because we always look over the fence, don't we? We always want to be something else.
And what I think what you touched on here is really important. It's like we envy the others that do what they want to do, and we wonder how do they make it work. And in the end, they take the risk, right? It does cost something, but it's not like you make $1 million and then you can do what you want to do. And it's not how life works, is it?
No. I mean, Mr. You had lots of conversations of just like myself, and you speak to people who have blockbuster agencies, you know, they do the work, they are at the forefront of the industry, you know, everything looks amazing, and behind the scenes it's stress. They're just about making it, they're just about joining, you know, the payroll with what's coming in, and you're like, but it's amazing. You're like, how much is your overhead? Wow, okay, that's scary, you know, like, obviously again, bigger fish doesn't always taste better, you know, it's like you have to really kind of keep, and that's the name of the game. Of course, you can sell the agency for a few £1 million and you can cash out, but is the stress always worth it, right?
Yeah, it's actually like I work with some of those big studios, and it's like, in the end, they have the same problems, but at a bigger scale, and it's multiplied. It's like they just learn to cope with it, to cope differently, and it's like one story is like there's this £20 million studio, and then they lost a £10 million production value because of the writer's strike, right? It's bad. And so, yeah, it's just like it's I love what you said, like bigger doesn't mean better, right? It's like it's just more problems, and it's, yes, you have a team and things. So I really love what you've done. So basically you outsource, but you also have the benefits of it, like the benefits of small studio, but also you don't have to do all the work. So you kind of act like a big studio owner, big agency owner in a small studio, and it kind of makes a lot of sense, really. Like you do outsource, that's what the big studios do, but you do it on a small scale, and now you have all that freedom, and you have like big budgets and things like that. So seems like a good model you're running there.
I mean, it's a model. Thank you. I mean, thank you that it looks fun on the outside, but it's a change of life. I mean, I'm a dad. I've got 2 young kids. One of them is 8. I've got a girl. Girl who's 8. My boy is 4. And I value the family time because I'm a big sucker for quotes. And one of the quotes said, "The only people who will remember that you worked late in 20 years will be your kids." You know, right? I'm sure you've seen it. Yes. And it's scary to think how many hours a day I work now, because it's almost minimal. It will give me a palpitations 10, 15 years ago. I'd be like, what do you mean you work 5 hours a day? Like, that's impossible. I'm like, that's what I do. You know, I look after myself. I exercise every day, every morning. I just came back from a cycle. I'm going to do a podcast. I'm going to do a few hours of work. I'm going to do a couple of client calls. I'm going to go pick up my kids. And the next time I'm going to work is about 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock at night for 2 hours. So it's structured, obviously, but it works around the family time. And that would give me an absolute panic attack, because I used to work from 8 till 8 for about 10 years. And if not more, like if not longer, I used to work from 10 o'clock in the morning till 4 o'clock in the morning, you know, like literally, like I used to work those long hours, and I was never finished. And I don't think I was always happy, you know, like, because there's always so much to do.
Are you finished now? Are you ever finished?
I'm getting closer, but I'm less desperate about the end line, because I know that everything is a work in progress, because we kind of feel like, right, let me rephrase it. Creativity is like running a race. You know, like, or what we do, we come prepared to the starting line. That's what we do. And we can decide how well prepared we can be. So we can spend some time working on our creative skills, understanding of the brief, understanding of ourselves, understanding of the industry, how we can do the stuff. But we don't always bring our best minds to the work, So if you get yourself to the race, you want to run it as fast as possible in the best possible way. So like you want to create the best possible work with every client because we care about portfolios, like, oh, this is going to look good in my portfolio, I'm going to do this. Whereas now I know it's a work in progress. So I'm not going to put myself under undue pressure because you can't have a good result every single day. You're going to be fatigued, you're going to be distracted, you're going to have other ideas. And I think giving yourself time for reflection makes so much more sense and so much. I think it's a part of growing up, maturing, because we grow into patience. Because when you find yourself in your early stage of your career as having a shower, obviously thinking, oh, the shower is where the ideas come from, like this is what happens. What do you want to do? You want to get to the starting line and finish it as soon as possible. So what do? You just stay up forever to make it happen. And then you realize, actually, I could have done this better. I could have done that better. Whereas I've been launching, this is a bit of a joke, but I've been launching my coffee company. Well, the idea is 6 years old and we've only just launched it. It took me about a month of work spread across the 6 years because we tried a little bit, we did a bit, something jumped in, there was COVID, there was different, the supply wasn't right, the packaging wasn't right. By the time it announced it, somebody else kind of used the ideas, then we wanted to change it. Some whole industry was using this sort of similar idea of like little characters. So I'm like, let's launch it when it's right, because you can have your MVP, and that's your first throw of the dice. But I believe that if you want to make an impact, it takes time and it takes, it pays to take time to actually get it right, because you want to launch on par rather than be sort of this poor looking cousin. Like, what you doing here? What you launching? What's that? You fix yourself. So I think it's all about patience. I think it's just like giving yourself time to do this, because of course, I'm just like still like everyone, like the part of me still would like to be finished years ago and doing this and having it bolder and bigger and, still have more work and stuff. But no, I now know where my limits are. I've defined my enough. I know where my enough is, and I know where my energy is spent, that I don't look over, the shoulder, don't look over the highway or, over the fence going, I wish I was doing that, because I now know what I do now is perfectly what I want to do.
So you're true to yourself, right? That's kind of the...
I have come to accept it, yeah.
And something interesting, and I'm not sure if I heard that on your talk, on your speech, or in the podcast you have. You said when you're being your true self, you rid yourself of competition. What do you mean by
Correct. That? That's pretty much, I think, summarizing the previous answer. Like, I wanted to be as good as somebody, like in the past, especially when I was a graphic designer at the beginning, you look up to other people. So you want to be as good as them. Mm-hmm. And you tweak your style, you make changes in your work. So you're being accepted, because what we want to do, we want to be accepted as creatives. Like, we do this for our livelihood, for our survival instinct, for credit, and for money, right? And we want kind of all of the things to slot into place as easy as possible. And that doesn't always happen. So from being graphic designer, I started being illustrator in advertising. And I did have a bit of a signature style, but I was never really sort of secure with my style, if that makes sense, because I always felt, especially with advertising industry, it just uses a style for 5 months, 3 to 5, 6 months, and then it's onto something else. And you're like, it's the survival. Like, will I ever work again? Will I do this again? And then you kind of like, do I need to be a bit of this? Do I need to be a bit of that? Bit of this, bit of that. Whereas I have now come to accept that my identity in the industry is part designer and part author. Like, this is who I am. Yeah. And I know that the sort of amalgamation of the skill set and output is almost unique just to me. And I don't feel like I'm competing with anyone. If somebody publishes a book around, let's say, me publishing a book, that actually is helpful for the traffic. There's not a competition. This is just somebody else's work. And you kind of accept other people's work, and you don't feel like you've got the anxiety of like, is this good enough? Will people like it? Am I better than anybody else? I think that's mainly accepting this. Like, I am the best. I'm doing the best thing I can do because I know that in a few years' time I can do something better, or maybe I can grow to more understand.
Yeah. I like what you just said, like accepting other people's work is really like, if you don't accept it, you try to be better, you try to copy it, and you actually, like, if you compete, you're not yourself. That's so kind of becomes evident now to me. Um, and then the funny thing is, if you're yourself, like, you actually do better than when you compete when you copy someone else or compete with someone else. That's great, but it takes courage, right?
I think it takes ages, and I think it takes growing up. I think it's look. I just like everybody else. I was painfully insecure about what's going on. I think the survival instinct of running your own show is so heavy that you take on everything. You work with anyone, even if you dislike people, and you work every hour. Because I say, and I think I mentioned in the talk, is like the industry is based, or our career based on 4 elements: ego, ambition, insecurity, and anxiety in equal measure. Because you get into the industry and you really want to, like, especially if you're driven or if you like the other people's stuff, you want to be better. That's your ambition as well. So you go after it. Obviously, you want to promote yourself, all of the stuff. But equally, like, is my work good enough? Will I get paid? It's just like it's all of this sort of cocktail of emotions that can trip us up. Whereas now I was just like, I'm not scared about tomorrow. Like, tomorrow is just an opportunity rather than another survival, and I think that's, I think there's a lot of things that, come with age, but also spend more than sort of decade in therapy to unlock the reasons how I operate, like how I used to react to things, how I used to be insecure in meetings, like not just jumping into people's sentences or finishing them, like proving my worth, This is the element of ambition and anxiety and insecurity, I'm in the room, I need to prove my worth. Whereas you can be in the room now and you see people just basically not having their shit together. Like, why are you talking about this brief? Doesn't make sense. They were like, well, you're the creative one. What do you think? I'm like, I think you need more time to work it out because it doesn't make sense. As opposed to 20 years ago, be like, yeah, so let me give you 5 ideas. Maybe you'll be, and just like, no, stop. You don't have to prove your worth. Your worth is basically when you deliver what's needed from you. So it's just that thing about, like, you don't have to try to please people. Like, there's a time to do it, and it happens.
So true. When I coach a lot of people with pitching and stuff, and it's like, what everyone tries to do in a creative pitch is actually prove their worth, prove that they do good work. But what they don't see is that they wouldn't be in the creative pitch if the client wouldn't have already accepted that they do good work. So the pitch is not really about your work, right? It's not about proving yourself. It's more like bonding, trusting, building relationships, things like that. It's like, I love that you said it's like this proving thing, and it's a problem.
Yeah, I don't think we've ever had. I mean, I don't think I pitched. I think I pitched once. And I mean, I stayed true to our vision, what my studio was doing. And I think what was really interesting, because I was at this crossroads of my work with the studio when we were pitching. We were kind of in the mix for 3 or 4 quite chunky budgets, like a life-changing budgets, and we were in the running for 4 of those jobs, and we kind of missed out. Why? Like, closely, we always came second. We were told, like, okay, you've come second, because I was punching way above my weight, like with the studio. But we were, and we still are, sort of based on visual storytelling, like how actually we can create the things that client didn't even think are possible. Like opening the doors, opening that Narnia door, going like, this exists. Like, you never heard of this. We can do this. And because we didn't get that work, I was like, maybe it's the sign that, as opposed to keeping the bank account and the security bigger, this is going to take a year of my life doing something that was going to be, again, a dust in 2-3 years. Like, what do you want to create? I remember being in a meeting, in fact, with a client, and we were doing sort of finishing, photography for the staff, building their website, and finishing the design of their offices. And I remember talking to one of their sort of development people, And she says, okay, so what do you do? And then I said, this is my stuff, but I'm really finishing my books. And I remember how much I wanted to be in the room as an author rather than a branding studio sort of creative director. It was like, I want to have something which it's a conversation with anyone. You can talk about creativity and mindfulness and approach to sort of how we make our stuff to anyone. I can talk to your mum about it. I can talk to my mum about it. I can talk to anyone on the street. Like, how do we do stuff in our lives that makes us happy? And I remember how much I wanted that. And I was totally different to the situation I was in, which was paying me a lot of money. I was like, would I rather risk some of it, or would I want to stick with something that's great? I've arrived at that position where when I had with the studio everything I wanted, but I wanted to be true to myself. I wanted to do things that, will make me look back in long term and say, this was the right thing to do. And it was. Yeah, I mean, my life has changed, immeasurably in the last 18 months because, yeah, I will never look back and regret it.
So what's a key thing for people to understand? What's the takeaway for people? How can they get where you are? Because you know how most creatives out there feel. Like they pursue a dream, they're told this is the way you actually get famous. You have to work with big brands, blah 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 blah. What's something that you can give them? How do they find themselves, maybe? Or
I found through life that if you think 2 steps ahead, you're ready for what's coming next. So I'm working on 1 book, but I've got another 5 books sketched out. I know what I wanted to do next. I kind of in some way I've got like the next 5 years planned out in my head what I want to do, because there's things I want to achieve. I've got goals. I know there might be kind of unlikely goals because for the first, let's say, 15 years of my creative career, I had 0 goals. We just wanted to survive, we just wanted to have clients and hopefully do some nice work. And it's kind of informing myself from different sources, because if you speak to designers only or creatives only or illustrators only, you will hear the same problems and similar solutions. So you're not cross-pollinating. So I remember when I discovered something called the School of Life around 12 or 13 years ago, which is kind of like a modern philosophy of life. And they had amazing speakers like Ken Robinson, who kind of opens your sort of mind a bit more. Because if you listen to old school designers, they'll be like, well, I want to stop client work and I want to do this. And they're like, dude, I'm 20 years old. Inspire me, tell me how I can achieve things, rather than, you just give yourself a reach around on the stage and tell us how amazing you are. I don't care. I want to know about people who will make us feel better, because, as I said just a few minutes ago, being in therapy opened my eyes to so many things. Emotional intelligence is such an integral component to our creativity that once you start thinking about how I can help others, how I can find my own expression, and that potentially be passed on others for their benefit and for their better work, that changes everything. Because when I've accepted what I do and how I do it, I can only start thinking, what else can I offer? Because when I mentioned those 4 elements, ego, ambition, anxiety, insecurity, when we start in the creative industry, we want to satisfy the ego. Sometimes it's mistaken for bravado, because what you want to do the best work for yourself. So you run that race for yourself as fast as possible. Then you realize, what? I'm good. I'm solid here. Maybe I want to look after maybe more of my clients, and I start compromising. I'll be actually okay about how I do this stuff. Maybe this is all fine. And then you realize, what can I do for the others outside my clients? What can I do for the benefit of the industry? How can I actually help others? And I think those 3 stages of our careers really influence us how we do stuff, because it's not easy to write a book. And it's not even easier to actually sell a book, because we've been successful with our books because I spent obsessively 4 or 5 years every day working on processes and workflows, how to sell more books. So it's not a passive income. Like, anyone who says that is an idiot, because they haven't had a chance to actually properly look into it. But it's the sort of incremental positive habits that get you somewhere. So I know what I want to do and what I want to achieve. I know who I want to be. I know how good I want to be. I know where I'm going, and I do it every day. So if I want to if I want to cycle a race, I know I have to exercise every day. If I want to be a better functioning human being, I need to look after my mental health every day a little bit, because it's not just like that sort of press a button or take a tablet solution. So if somebody wants to do something that sort of makes them a little bit scared, but that idea doesn't go away at all, ever, then that's a good sign that you want to do it. Because out of all the things that are possible to us, of course, I would like to do 20 other things that look really good. People seem to be having fun doing them. But I know that's not my true expression. Like I don't necessarily feel like I need to be on social media, making reels about Instagram features or whatever. Like I'm doing my thing and my output is true to myself. So I'm not worried about having smaller following than some other people publishing books, because I know how to sell books. I don't have to be waiting for someone on social media. I think there's processes and there's methods that are true to what we do. So to me, it's about pursuing things that just don't go away. And, the world doesn't need another book on creativity. The world doesn't need another coffee company. But what we create an honest expression that links to people and actually has got something to say and something to connect with a, enough big audience to actually give us freedom to do it full time.
And it's kind of what you said, like no one needs another design studio or coffee company and things like that. But when it comes from you, from inside you, if that's really what you want to do, it's also becomes special, right? It's different then. And it doesn't really matter. Like the whole thing, you stop wondering about, can I make this work? Isn't there already enough out there that do that? And when you just go in there, you could actually come up with something unique, with something different, but you have to put your soul in. So something you also said is everyone should have a message.
Yeah. Isn't that scary to hear?
It's scary, yeah, because most do not have. And I work, like, this is one of the things I work with people on, like, but why should everyone have a message?
Well, no one needs anything until they realize that what they're doing doesn't work, because I always used to get scared and intimidated when you would read an article like how every designer should be a storyteller. And if you rewind back by 20 years, no one could say a word about anything, like being a storyteller. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it's like designers were like, this is my work. What do you want to know? I don't want to tell you anything. This is my work. Just the work's doing the talking. Whereas now we are changing. Like you get Gen Zers who are happy to talk about a piece of work for 15, 20 minutes on YouTube. You're like, this is what I did. This is how I did that, because that's the new norm. And that's changing. And I think the more you talk about yourself, the more you actually prod the work, the more you think about your process, then you have more to say. Yeah. And it comes as like, I feel like as creators, we need to be multifaceted in so many different ways, because the world has changed. Of course, you can keep hiding behind your code and do things that, like you can still live the old school way of living, if that makes sense, like a creative career. But what do you start for? What do you want to create? Because are you here to not be a creative service? Then that's fine. Obviously, like we need creative service people. Like Fiverr's full of people who can do one thing for you. They're the equivalent of a plumber. Like, I've got a leak. I know how to fix your leak. Job done. Thank you. Like we don't need. The plumber doesn't need a purpose and a message.
No.
An art worker doesn't need a message. But I think it comes with time, and I think it comes with curiosity and that sort of cross-pollination, because as you know, the quote I use in my talk is that the market is only saturated if you look and sound like everybody else. And that's so easily done, because when you close your eyes and you that sort of parade of creative studios, 3D work, let's say generative 3D and that kind of stuff, it looks grand. It looks amazing. I mean, we made progress like never before. But if it was a blind test, like, is it one studio? Is it 5 studios? Is this studio? This is, for example, like we had a studio like Serial Cut, who had their own like a visual message, like, you look at a piece of work and it's like, that's serial cut. But they've evolved, and they're like, I look at their work now, I'm like, I don't know who you are. I would never spot it. And I think that element of signature style and actually knowing what you want to create and actually have a bit of a sort of more meaning behind your work helps you to find a message. My message is to produce work that I wish existed 20 years ago. The reason why I make books is because I wish they existed 20 years ago so they can help my former self. So that's why I do it for people who are 20 years younger in the situation that I was. I've started a coffee company because I wanted to have a coffee company that speaks to other creatives about the values of taking breaks and kind of looking after their mental health. So there's a bigger meaning behind it. But again, it didn't come to me at day one. It was like, oh, let's start a coffee company with this reason. I have started a coffee company that I wish existed. How do you source and introduce really good specialty grade coffee to people who currently are pushing Nespresso pods, in their Nespresso machines? So it's about, I always say I'm the patient zero in these things, because I wish I had that guiding light in my career and in my life, which was missing most of the time. So I'm kind of retrofittingly creating it maybe for the benefit of my kids, or, partially having the span of my universe that sort of have an influence on, let's say 1,000 or 2,000 true fans. And, people, we've sold 77,000 books. There's a vast number of people who got the thing in their hand printed. And I think it's a journey, like knowing your message, knowing your purpose, knowing your worth and your direction and your guidance. I think it's a continuous thing that we grow and accumulate and form and become something unique, because you can borrow, again, for the acceptance, you can borrow the message, but it's never going to fit that well.
So how do you touched on your books. How do you find, like those books have clear messages, right? So how do you find those messages, and how do you actually carve out those messages? How do you go about that? Because writing a book for a lot of creatives seems daunting. How would you do that?
There's so many things I can tell you about writing books, but I think the first reason was that I wish the books existed, especially the latest ones. I've started making books, and I'm making quote marks, because I was promoting myself as a freelancer and illustrator through promoting, like, for printed booklets. So it was like 32 pages, 64 pages. I would frisbee that around the world, just send it to any art director, a company or whatever. Like, that was my promo. And then I started speaking on stages at conferences and festivals. And it was only then when I realized what I was saying about my process, I had something to add to others, because they were like, what do you think? What do you mean? What is that? So it was only like the cumulative value and the process of actually understanding what was in my head, what was in my process, how I can sort of articulate it. And my first child was being born in 2016, and I was like, okay, I need to finish my first book. And it was very much just sort of a snapshot of who I was as a creative. There was the underlying message in everything that I do is mindfulness, because I burned out so badly about 11 years ago, hence the therapy, trajectory, that everything that I do and say and encourage others to do is to enjoy what they do. It's not about, breathing, do box breathing before you start a project or before you pick up a call. It's more about, like, understand what you're doing, because it's so easy to be taken under the water and start sort of gasping for air. So this is my kind of message. This is my underlying golden thread through all of it. And this is why it all sort of snowballed from there, by trying to enrich people's lives through my written work.
How do you care better about yourself when a client has demands and deadlines, and then how can you navigate that space?
I'll take you back to what you said about pitching. The pitching is not about necessarily can you do the work, it's about who you are. So we pick clients, and I'm really like, I need to do a double tap on my desk, because we've got such lovely clients that there's no dramas. It took a long time to get these clients, but there's no dramas. There's a respect, that we get paid what we not asked to be paid. But I had to kiss a lot of frogs to understand where do I want to be in that process. Because when you think about bigger agencies and bigger client side teams, there's always going to be a makeup of people who are from all sorts of walks of different lives. There'll be different traumas, there'll be different problems, there'll be different days. Like we don't always wake up like fully refreshed, eaten well, everything's fantastic. Like we always have something that we need to deal with. And then when you put sort of 20 people on one side and the other side, it's going to be a bit of a melee, like as much as you want something to work really well, there's going to be too many parts in play. So when clients want to be, busy, hectic, on demand, on deadline, it's how we deal with it, because the whole purpose of mindful work is how to be okay when things are not okay. How do you build a sort of emotional resilience and a creative resilience that you can deal with it? Because there was a great joke by a comedian called Lee Evans who said, the people who answer the 999 calls, and you sort of pick up a phone, it's like, oh, the house is on fire. And you just imagine them going, oh, my tea's everywhere, like I'm panicking. Did you say there's a house on fire? Really? All right, maybe we should send fire. No, of course, they answer the phone and go, hey, 999, how can I help you? There's a house on fire. No problem. We'll find you someone to come up and we'll put the fire out. And I think it's, again, that patience and that resilience of like, a client has a freak out. And let's say I will rewind back by 2 years. We had a client going, there's mistakes, this is not right. I'm like, well, I've checked the work. There might be one or two minor mistakes, but I know that out of, let's say, 300 pieces of elements, 2 might be wrong, but most of it is 100% right. Like, make sure you check it. I can sense that she's panicking about something different. Like there's she's under pressure, and she's only passing it on to us because we are the first point of next call.
Yeah.
And you're like, I know it's not us. I know that the house is not on fire. We get them paid. We got signed contract. We done the work to do our best abilities. I've checked it twice, and she's stressed out. Well, I know it's not us, and this is the element of actually knowing that everything's fine. And I'll give you a good analogy. I used to be a nervous flyer. I used to on a plane, flying somewhere fun, having lots of fun, and then flying home back hangover. And I'll be on a plane going, this is different sound. This is weird sound. The engine doesn't sound good. What is this? Like, the plane, the shift is the tilt is shifting. Like, what is going on? And I'll be like gripping my seat thinking, we going down. We're definitely going down. And a friend of mine afterwards told me, if you feel like that on the plane, if you think the plane's going down, look around you. Just look around you and see. Find someone who flies every week. The businessman, like sort of just reading a book or whatever. Like, look at him. When he loses his shit, you lose yours.
That's a good one. That's true.
Yes. Yeah, and it changed my life because we preempt with creative process so much that we thinking, like sometimes we preempt thinking this is too great, like this is too good, like we can't lose this project, like this is so good.
Yeah.
And client goes, what are you doing? This doesn't make any sense. Whereas, sometimes you get like clients stressing. I'm like, well, I'm not stressing because I know what everything's happening here. So it's just like, how do you influence the situation through your own being? And this is kind of working on yourself, on your resilience, on your understanding, on your emotional intelligence, to be in a position when you say, yeah, the plane's not falling down. We are fine. Let me tell you, the plane's not falling down. Like, we're okay.
That's a great analogy, like with this. Yeah, you don't have, like, we are over stressing a lot of times when the client comes back with yeah, you're right. They have pressure in some way, and they just pass it on, right? Because that's the only thing they can do. And if the client gets angry for some reason, and as you said, you double check the work, there can always be a problem, but it's not like it may not be your fault, and the client may overreact, right? It's like and then I like this, and I like this, the idea that I like this approach to actually step back and actually react, like reflect on the information you get, and then react, and not just be this headless chicken that's running around. That's great. So I want to ask you one more question. I know you're the guy of messages. So what's one message you want to give, you want to tell the audience? What should we leave the audience with?
It's a big question.
I know, love big questions.
Because I think we just spent 45 minutes going through all of those things. So the message I would like to leave you with is that being true to yourself pays off.
That's amazing. Cool. Radim, thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure speaking to you. And actually, I would love to repeat this.
Yes.
Maybe when your next book comes out or shortly afterwards.
Thanks for tuning in. My name is Marco Fun, and I hope to see you all again on our next show where we unfold creative business minds.